Hey everybody, I am stoked to welcome my friend Katie Booty Adorno, the founder and CEO of Leanlab Education, and Jorge Holguin, the Director of Community Partnerships with Leanlab as well. I have known Katie for, gosh, about 5 years now, 5+ years. And it has been so awesome to see her steer what was an idea when we first met into something real. And innovating and pushing innovation across the K-12 sector in really, really interesting ways. Um, Before we get more to kind of the heart of Leanlab, I do want to share, Katie, like the thing that I am most, I find most like fascinating about what you've built, your approach, is that you're advancing innovation through the lens of research. And in this time where everyone is adopting ed tech tools and thinking about hybrid and thinking about better ways to reach kids and support teachers, um, you have created this matching program through the pilot research program that creates this dual benefit. On the one hand, you have public school districts and schools, and on the other hand, you have ed tech companies that are trying to innovate. And on the one hand, you have innovative schools that are constantly looking for, um, the best tools to support their school communities. And on the other hand, you're looking at companies that are looking for safe spaces to get real feedback on their products and services so that they can um, serve and ultimately um, improve the lives of more students across the country. And so really fascinated with this approach and appreciate you guys taking the time to share a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
So let's jump in. Katie, just why don't you share a little bit more about what the pilot research program is all about?
Yeah, as you said, Russ, functionally, what Lean Lab does is we pair high potential ed tech companies with real life classrooms, and together they can inform how new education technology or innovations evolve to the benefit of students. So for our pilot research program, what we realized, and I'm a former educator, was that there was no, as a former educator, there was no safe space to try new things and to do so and innovate and really do so in also a rigorous fashion that had data informed insights underneath it that brought best practices from the research field to education innovation. So in our pilot research program, what we do on a really basic level is we look for school districts or schools that are wanting to try new things, that see this moment in time as a huge opportunity to change the way education is done and to leverage education technology to propel student outcomes. So we find those school communities and we say, hey, what are the challenges you have that you want to innovate on?
Mhm.
They tell us what those are, and that sends us to work going to find education technology that meet their needs. What's
Mhm.
really cool though about our program is that we believe, really core to our DNA, is that this belief in community voice and what we call co-design, that breakthroughs in education actually won't happen unless we really are listening to parent, student, teacher voice, those that are most impacted by these solutions. We research and evolve these technology products. So what that means concretely is what we give to schools then is this professional learning community. These teachers and administrators have the chance to learn from each other, learn how other schools are innovating, and be together as they innovate themselves. Grant funding, we give them about $10,000 of unrestricted funds to participate in
Mhm.
this process and studies. Teacher empowerment, we hope that as teachers and even sometimes parents and students are giving their ongoing feedback to an education technology tool, that they begin seeing how their insights actually lead to real change in the process itself and ultimately the adoption in the school district, and that they feel empowered by that process, that their feedback matters. And then finally, procurement smarts. We hope that through the data that we're gleaning from how the education technology uh, works in the natural school environment, that we're able to capture that in our research reports and able to hand that back over to an administrator and say, this is how this pilot experience actually went. And you can make an informed decision if you want to scale that up to your whole system or not. But like I said, I think the real secret sauce here, though, is that community voice, is that there's no place in the country where you can try a new education innovation in its natural environment of a school, get that real feedback from the teachers and students, and use that to keep improving. And that voice is really what's special about what we do here at Leanlab.
So what does that look like, as a practical matter? Jorge, feel free to jump in on this as well. What does kind of community co-design look like in this context?
Hey, thank you, Russ, for having us. As Katie mentioned, our goal with this process is to continue to look for those innovative schools, but also we're here to support and listen. With that in mind, we call our process our listening tour, which is an opportunity to bring in from the early stage conversations to bring those representatives, so parents, teachers, administrators to the table, and create a placing them all together in a way that we can have a conversation about the pain points. What we mean by that is the different challenges that are happening within the schools, and step back and think about a way that is creative and figuring out what opportunities might be out there with it. Whether it's a education technology solution that might be able to address it, but through the process, being able to maintain that constant feedback from teachers, as Katie mentioned. And we do that through a series of interviews, series of dialogues. It's happening and what can be improved in the edtech space, but also what can continue to improve outside of that. So for example, one of our alumni, Kirsten Brown, who's a principal at Crossroads High School, she went through this process with her team. And after stepping outside of this program, successfully completing it, she realized that the value assets of co-designing, and as we know, during COVID, there has been a lot of uncertainty. So there has been an opportunity for her to apply this with her team and making sure that she's involving parents as well as partners, and able to make sure that we're making the best decision for our students.
So there's some design thinking DNA that gets ideally like retained within that school community long after the research program. That's great. So sort of the other side of the market, I heard a little bit about the value proposition on the school side. On the other side of that are the edtech entrepreneurs. Why don't you share a little bit more about kind of what's in it for them? What's the value proposition to those folks to be a part of this program?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, education technology entrepreneurs have the problem of, and I think most district administrators can relate to this too, they're trying to get into a system, especially if they're earlier stage, if they're not a known name brand in education. They just want a shot to see, hey, does our product really move the needle for children? But they want to do that in an ethical way, and they want to do that in a way that can be fairly evaluated. So I think that's what we bring to table, is that we can, for the ed tech entrepreneur, get them into a real school environment and provide them that much craved feedback and insight into if their product is working as intended, and that opportunity to keep evolving it so that it can get to their aspiration. And then two, for the administrator in the school system, we can kind of be that trusted vetter. We can say we're not going to let something in unless it meets a certain threshold of standards, and you can trust that we're bringing only things to you that meet your actual needs, that aren't something arbitrary or extra, because Jorge and his team are able to do that deep community work.
And then what's like the duration then of this project overall? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking full school year? Or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I can speak about that. So typically, a pilot research program will last a semester, but we are looking into ways for opportunities to engage in shorter periods of time, whether that is trying something small, right? And I think the benefit for that is both for our entrepreneurs and our school partners, because it gives them an opportunity to try something directly without that long-term commitment, but still looking for ways to innovate within the school.
And there are different types of research, I heard previously. Does that affect then the duration as well?
Yes, and I'll pass it to Katie to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. We have several different types of research we're specializing in, but one, if we're looking for quick, efficient studies, we call those usability studies, which will take less than a semester, maybe a couple of months, where we're looking for teachers to give feedback on the product functionality. And then the longer term studies that Jorge is referring to that are semester long are more implementation or efficacy studies, where we really want to get under the hood and measure, is this product making an impact on student achievement or student outcomes as we define them. So those are longer and a little more rigorous.
Got it. Can you guys serve up some examples? I understand you guys have been running this program for a couple of cycles now. Why don't you talk about some examples where, hey, this district had a problem, you guys helped to connect them to a solution provider and to address a particular pain point?
Yeah, I can definitely start. Especially during COVID, some of the main pain points that came out were like parent engagement and then social emotional learning, as we can only imagine, right, what we're all experiencing.
Yeah.
just being able to take that in right for a moment. What we've been able to do, and Ross, just to give you a little bit more background, I think something that is unique to us as well is that we work with all different type of districts. And this last cohort, that highlights that. For example, within parent engagement, we were working with Clinton County, which is a rural school district here in Missouri, and we're also working with the Kansas City, Missouri Public School District and a few of the charter schools as well. So it gives you that dynamic there directly of like who we're working with and how we know that all students need support. To give you a specific example, with Clinton, the need was again around parent engagement, and we after vetting a few entrepreneurs and meeting with the co-design group of the representatives at the school, they narrowed down to working with a company that's called Zone to Grow. So it's an opportunity for a platform where the teachers can continue to communicate and also leverage those resources. So I'm happy to share those examples here in the link shortly, so you can learn a little bit more. But I wanted to talk as well with the Kansas City, Missouri Public School District. We're actually working with two schools there within the district, and the company that we're working with it's called Classcraft. So that it's a tool that is helping students with social emotional learning, and it provides a platform where students can take the initiative and recognize what they're doing well and what they need to improve in a way that it's progressive, and also creates not gamification, but it creates that opportunity for them to see how not only how they're doing, but how their class is doing, how can they get rewarded for that. So has those cool traits again. I'm happy to share the links here and for your audience as well.
Cool. Thanks for that. You touched on COVID and just what a year it's been for educators everywhere. I would think that, a district administrator turning to teachers right now and saying, do you want to engage in something like this? Like would be kind of, in a time of initiative fatigue, let alone initiative fatigue, adding something like this would potentially not be something that districts want to engage in right now. Have you what extent have you kind of encountered that type of concern as it relates to, potentially getting districts involved in this?
Yeah, I mean, I think surprising. That was honestly, I think one of my personally, I think the team's big fear is that we worked very closely with a lot of school districts during COVID with their technology recovery work and trying to make sure all their students had internet access and just basic machines, let alone education tools to be successful with distance learning. But what we found actually is that many of our school districts, once they got through the kind of initial shock of moving to distance learning, were able to zoom out and say, wow, this is an incredible opportunity to really try to do things differently, to move our industry into the 21st century and to start building new platforms and new ways to better serve our students and to realize we can get out of a one size fits all model and really start dreaming of new tools, new environments, new ways to get all of our students what they need. So shockingly, what we've heard from several large school districts is a resounding yes, this is the time to try new things. That doesn't mean try them irresponsibly. That means try them in a way to double down on the research, double down on how we're gaining insights in evidence-based ways. And also at this moment in time, double down on our commitment to equity and inclusion and make sure that we're surfacing voices from parents, student, teacher communities in a way that really is driving this change.
That's great to hear that.
And if I may add,
Sure.
from the perspective of the teachers and administrators and even parents, this has been a great channel to echo some other challenges, right? So putting a wish list together of like, oh, this is amazing, right? Like now I'm also wanting to play with this other pain points that I have, and looking at it in that way rather than looking at like, oh, we have all of these challenges and we don't know how to move forward. But now look at it and like, here's our priority. This is where we want to focus. And this is kind of where our teachers are also echoing and our parents. So how can we move together towards that? And has been able to create that communication and that space to have those conversations while amplifying the voices of those that normally wouldn't be representative in decision making.
Yeah,
That's great.
a perfect point. Like what we're able to do is find that where is that like really magic point where everyone is in a line to the same kind of thought or insight, and we think like that could be their propulsion to innovation in these big systems.
And so do you kind of like take anybody, if I'm a district superintendent or assistant superintendent and I want to kind of form a team to engage in something like this, do you guys work with anyone anywhere, or are there sort of districts that actually aren't a good fit for this program?
We at this point in time we're based in Kansas City, Missouri, but we're working with school districts all over. So what really comes first is that mindset and that commitment to want to try something new and wanting to do so in a community oriented and inclusive way. So first and foremost, those are what we're looking for from school districts, large and small.
Great. So open to anyone for the most part, as long as the mindset is aligned.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. And then returning back to the ed tech side of things, I've crossed paths with several ed tech entrepreneurs and startup companies, and I think all of them sort of want that holy grail. Like they want that like gold, platinum level, research, random controlled, that shows that their randomized control trials that shows that their thing works, their product works, their service works, and that they can use that to like sell it to districts all over. How does that fit into kind of your offering here? What stage companies are you typically working with? I'd imagine earlier stage ones, they might want the Cadillac, but like there's probably some things that they need to do before that. How does it work with this program?
Yeah, I mean, that is something we often hear. And I think it's two-pronged. It's one, there's an acknowledgement. And I think we've seen this, it's a great analogy here with the vaccine trials for COVID, that the traditional long-term multi-year way to demonstrate efficacy or impact of a tool no longer fits a 21st century context, particularly under a time like now where we can't afford to wait. So I think under that context, we have to get more creative and more efficient with the way we measure how solutions are benefiting children in the learning environment. And so I think what thing that we're trying to guide companies to is that's actually good news for an early stage company, because that means that there are more efficient studies that they can do to demonstrate that impact. And so we really think that that's one way, is that we can do semester-long studies where we can do experimental studies. We can get robust data sets once we have data share agreements with school systems and get under the hood and look at how all these things are relating to each other to the end of measuring student impact. But we also believe that because of our co-design process, we're giving entrepreneurs more at-bats faster, where they, instead of waiting for 3 years through an RCT to only realize that the effect was null, or that they didn't have a chance to make something a better experience for those students, we can give those insights in almost real time so that they can improve the product and move toward the intended impact faster, which really is the goal here, is to improve student experiences and improve their learning outcomes versus waiting for a more rigid study structure to be complete. So that's the goal. And then with the usability studies, our hope is that, again, we can intervene faster. We can give these entrepreneurs an insight into just how to make their product easier to use or more fun to use for students and teachers.
Cool. Well, I want to thank your time, just taking the time to share a little bit more about the work you're doing. Jorge, do you want a quick plug? How can folks learn more about this? Should they want to learn more or get involved?
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you, Ross, for that and for having us. If folks want to learn more about it, you can visit our website at leanlabeducation.org. We'll have the information here, and we'll also be including our emails as well. So just feel free to reach us. As just a final note, wanted to end with, this is a process for all of us. So whether you feel like you're not ready, this is kind of like where, but if you're willing just to try it out and just have the conversation, that's kind of where we want to start and meet you where you are and progress, at your own pace rather than going through a fast process as well. So thank you again, Ross, for having us today.
Thanks, Jorge. Thank you, Katie. Appreciate you both.
Yeah, thank you.